I love this record, and I love Lou. I love the purity of his soul, his songwriting. It was just, you listen to the songs and you just think they're like Happy Birthday. They're just simple. They're genius. I got to have breakfast with Lou. He said, "Well, do you tell the truth in interviews?" I mean, generally, I try to tell the truth in my life. Yeah, just, as a general rule, yeah, why not? He goes, "I don't. I've never told those bastards anything but lies."
Welcome to Spin Magazine's Lip Service. How you guys doing? Thanks for coming. This is the first live installment. Someone said to me the other day, I was a little nervous. They said, "Here's a beta blocker. I don't even take drugs." And I'm like, "What's a beta blocker?" "Well, it could be a Xanax." I'm like, "I don't think that's good that I take any of that." But anyway, I'm not on either one of them.
You got to test that, man. You got to take it to the tester.
We want to thank Ed for coming from Live and all the other bands. Ed's the man. We're friends. We became friends right after that last show. I appreciate you coming in. Ed's going on tour soon, right? You got a whole, what do you got, 30 dates?
Yeah, we're headed out early July for 8 weeks, 31 shows, I think, with most of them with Collective Soul as a package.
And the last time you guys toured with them or played with them was when?
Gosh, 2008, I think. Long time ago.
Great catalog.
Great band, really fun. And we've been friends with them for a long time.
We were just chatting about the 90s, Ed, and we were coming up with our top 5 list of 90s bands. It's hard because there's so many great bands, right? Somebody said Rage, somebody said the Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, but I put Live in one of the best bands from that era for sure. And you guys played the other night. It was the first show of the tour, right?
Yeah, it was the first show this year, kind of getting the wheels moving again. We had a couple shows here on the East Coast, one in New Jersey and Philly. Yeah, it was amazing. It was when you're off for like 6 months, I know the other musicians here can say, it's such a great feeling when you finally see the guys again and you just get up there and you haven't seen them for a minute. And it's just feels like it was no time, but too much time went by. It's this weird.
When's the last time you did a show with them?
Just back in October last year, but it felt like it could have been 10 years or 2 weeks. It was just like, I love you guys, I missed you.
And the great thing about Live, you guys know, because a lot of you guys came in for the show, they have every song on the set. There were 16 songs you guys played. I knew I would say maybe 15 of them, right? Which is great. So the catalog's incredible. Take me back to the beginning, Ed. We talked a lot about your history and New York City last time. You guys got signed at a CBGB's.
Yes, not too far from here in CBGB's. There was a live New York nexus that happened that not a lot of people are aware of. We're from Pennsylvania originally, but it was really nowhere to play. So we were signed again from CBGB's, and we used to come here pretty regularly to New York. And so we were kind of an adopted New York band. And then we ended up being signed by a fully New York legend manager record company guy named Gary Kurfürst, who managed Ramones and Talking Heads, who hooked us up with Jerry Harrison. And, we met, we're hanging out with Blondie. There was like this whole late 80s, thing that we were grafted onto as like these young kids from York, Pennsylvania, that everybody thought we were just a New York band, which I was fine with because I love New York.
Because at the time, Pennsylvania was not like a hotbed of rock and roll, right?
Yeah, it really, there's a couple places. I mean, you have Philadelphia is always, the big cities have places to play. But if we were going to get in the van, we're just, why go to Philly, come here, because this is where obviously all the record companies were and all the action. So we became a New York band, yeah.
What was CBGB's like back then? I never got to go. I always wanted to go. Was it this incredible place? I know it smelled terrible. And we spoke about some of the bars around in New York City.
It had an incredible sound system, which is why everybody played there, wanted to. It was a really hot place to try to get your showcase because they had a very simple but really great PA system that held up and was super loud and clear. And but the microphones were all sketchy and broken and stunk like beer and sweat.
Kind of like this place a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. No, this is like the Four Seasons. And but it was great. And you avoided the bathroom at all costs. Just hold it. Just hold it.
Is it strange that it's like a John Barbados now for you when you walk past it?
It's so more gentry now. Yeah, it's gentrified now for sure. It's definitely on scale.
I was going to say, you guys got paid, what, like $50 to play there or something?
Yeah, Hilly used to give us, the story goes up, he didn't pay anybody, but he gave us $100. And he just loved the fact that we drove from Pennsylvania. And we would use it for a tire or gas or whatever. And we always were sort of proud of the fact that we were the only band that Hilly paid. And so that was our badge of honor for a little bit until we got a record deal. And then that was, yes.
Why do you think he paid you and not the other bands? Just because he was a big fan?
He was really good friends with Gary.
Yeah.
And he helped all Gary's bands. And we were Gary's, new band. And so I think it was probably more about Gary than us, but thanks, Gary.
And the name Live, you kind of wanted to come up with a name that was sort of neutral, right? Because you didn't want anyone to tie in the music to the name. And when you think about it, it is a name that I always go, hey, Siri, play Live. They're like, what's that? What
Oh,
do I
yeah,
need to-
no,
what is
it's
Live?
full on. That was not the most prescient brand for the internet age. We'll just get that out of the way. But, you know, at the same time, it's also awesome because we made it as big as we did without a freaking name.
That's true.
And so that's kind of like this reverse badge of honor, too. I'm going to wear that.
Does it ever seem like it's been
show.
like 30 years for Throwing Copper, or over 30 years at this point for you?
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I just saw it down in Australia, it posted up that Throwing Copper re-entered the chart, the iTunes chart.
Incredible.
At number 20 or something. It's just wild to me that it still speaks so loudly to people. Yeah.
I love the stories behind some of the songs. We were talking about it today, about lightning crashes, and you played the show. I think it was 98, and the Tibetan concert, Freedom Concert.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys remember this, but actually somebody got struck by lightning right after you finished the song, which is crazy in itself. So tell us that story.
Yeah, so we were playing, I don't know, about 4:30, 5 o'clock on the bill, and it was our RFK Stadium in DC. And this crazy storm had whipped through while they were doing the changeover on the stage. Right after we'd, finished playing, I think we ended with lightning crashes and walked off stage. And about 10 minutes later, there was a strike. They had everybody, there was a warning, and then everybody sort of, hey, come inside and, get under the stadium, out of the open air. And but before that could happen, we had a strike, and it actually hit a railing and arced about, from what I heard, about 20 feet, and hit this girl and knocked her another 10 feet. She was all, knocked out. And when the ambulance took her to the hospital, she fully recovered. But I'll never forget it because, of course, we heard about it, like really concerned, like, oh, wow, we should check her on her and check what's going on. And it was in the paper and everything. And she, so we ended up, I gave her a call. And she was a huge fan. I gave her a call. She was still in the hospital. She's doing great. And she ended up, she lived 2 doors down from me. She said, I live on Hamilton Road in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I said, I just freaking moved to that road like 2 weeks ago. You're my neighbor. And that's the story.
What are the chances, right?
Yeah, out of 80,000, there were 85,000 people there. And the girl that got arc struck
Talk to me about
after lightning crashes was my neighbor, for God's sake.
Talk to me about your connection at the college radio, because we were just talking about the fact that there is no more rock and roll. And back then, REM and U2 were the bands that were really influencing you, right? So what was your connection? Because back then, you had the radio. Nobody listens to the radio anymore, I don't think. Maybe you do, I'm not sure. I still like radio when I can get it. But back then, what were you tuned into? I know U2 was a huge influence for the band.
Oh, yeah.
And you can really hear the REM influence if you listen back to some of your catalog now, too.
The Cure, early REM, U2, the Smiths. There was huge influence. And I remember, having to tune into, WVYC, York College Radio, to hear any of those bands. Before, obviously Nirvana broke through but before Nirvana even, REM had some pop success. They were sort of the first breakout, kind of alt band that everybody from the college world was like, what the hell? REM's on top 40, And that was pretty wild. But back in the mid to late 80s, I remember sitting, the box radio there and getting the antenna just right so I could make tapes of the Cure and REM and record the DJ because, we didn't have a record store. We didn't have an alt. There was a college bookstore. There was a radio. There was a record store in Lancaster, but nothing in York. So we recorded it live just right over the airwaves.
The days of making mixtapes, right? Did you have
totally.
a mixtape that you made when you were growing up that you really...
Yeah, that shit on pause and record.
Yeah.
It's coming. Ow.
And the first show you ever went to, like the real big show, was that U2 that kind of...
That was a big
you?
one. That was a big one. But my first show, one of my first rock concerts was Kix.
Amazing.
You remember
What do I remember them? One of my favorite bands. Yeah. I'm not ashamed to love hair metal because I was part of that scene.
I loved it. It was so loud. Yeah. My ears rang for like 3 months after that show. And I was like, that was too much.
And U2.
U2 was the big one that made me want to like be in a band and go like tour and figure out how to write songs and all that. But yeah, that was a huge moment. I was 16, 17, 16. It was 1987. on their Joshua Tree tour.
Lyrically, you always went really deep, right? I think, did the press initially say to you, we don't know what to make of this band because these guys are too serious.
Oh,
we don't understand what the hell they're talking about. And we're used to, the Chili Peppers or whoever's on the radio, but these guys are way too deep.
Yeah, we were young too. Like 20, 21 when these songs came out that had these like deep, spiritual themes that were super, super energetic and super, super intense. And so, there was a lot of like, what is going on with these guys? Where did they come from? Where did they crawl out? York, Pennsylvania? Are they Amish? Like, what is going on with these freaks?
Shit town? Where's that?
Yeah, where are these people? What is going on with these guys? And then it was this sort of like love affair with the fans that grew that, the press was sort of didn't know what to do kind of with the band. And then I think as we proved that we were good enough to like hang in and be out there and really doing it, it came around. But at the beginning, it was sort of like, what the hell? What is this band? Well, I was taking, all my influence those days from the singers and writers that were making me think, like you mentioned, U2 and Peter Gabriel and all these guys. And I felt like that those were those voices that I wanted to try to emulate, those kind of unique perspectives that, was just like, would just stop you in your tracks, capture your imagination. They did that for me. So I wanted to try to do it myself. And
you get a call and your manager of the label says, hey, we got the Talking Heads are going to produce you. And you were like, is this David Byrne or who is it? It's not the keyboard player.
I thought David Byrne was going to walk in with the big suit. We were just going to like live happily ever after and have sell 10 million records. No, it ended up being Jerry Harrison. I remember, who's Jerry?
Who is Jerry? We know.
I didn't know. I thought he was a guitar player in Talking Heads. I said, okay, cool. I just wanted to make a record. It turned out to be the best situation ever, but at first I didn't know who he was.
He's produced so many incredible records. People don't know.
Yeah.
But he's like a plethora of incredible records.
Big time. And that was part of this New York connection that, I've been having fun telling the stories about because, again, it's not something that people know about the band because we're just thought of as East Coast or Pennsylvania, but not New York.
How did this record end up getting mixed at like a Playboy resort or the defunct Playboy resort?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, right? That someone call you and say, we got a great place to mix this record. It's the Playboy resort.
It was such a surprise because we recorded the record at Pachyderm and I think it was in Minnesota. And that was where our Nirvana had done In Utero about a year before that, or had just been in there not recently. And so we were like, oh my God, we can't wait to go there. And it sounded incredible. But the mixes that we got out of there were terrible. And we just were freaking out. The record company was like, this sucks. Why did we even sign this band? And
they're Amish.
So why did we sign these Amish guys? So, to the rescue comes Tom Lord-Alge, who is this amazing mixer and friend of Jerry Harrison's, who sort of flew in last minute. And he said, I found a studio, get in the car and drive to Cannon Falls, it's Cannon Falls, I got to get my cities right. Geneva, Wisconsin, and go to this place, and there's a studio there. We're like, all right. So we pull up into this old hotel. There's no one there. It's just but this massive old golf resort with this hotel. And we pull up, we're like, what's going on? We saw maybe Jerry's rental car and his other car. And so we're making our way into this thing. We walk into this lobby, and I'll never forget it because we open up these doors, and it's probably 7,000 square foot lobby filled with fuzzy mirrors, beds, all this 70s porno set you could think of, like every single, all the lights, the mirrors, everything. But it's all just stored there. Like they emptied all the rooms of this place into the lobby. And like, there's no studio, there's no one even here. So we're kind of making our way through this. Oh, it's back here. You got to just keep walking through all this shit and all the furry lamps and go back to that corner of that door. And you go make your way back. It's in the dark. It's like practically dark. There's barely lights on. Open the door and there's this fully functional, like 2-room studio that was. So this whole place, long story short, was an old Playboy resort that had gone out of business. And but they kept the studio going for Playboy Records because it was the only thing that was making money, and they had invested in the equipment. So the only thing working, this entire old funky Playboy resort, was the studio.
I wonder if that studio is still open. Probably not.
I don't know. I doubt it. I doubt it. And so we go in, and then Tom Algie was sitting there, and I'll never forget. I walked in, and he was working. The first song he did was this song called "Selling the Drama," which is I guess second on the album. And he had transformed it, and it really sounded like the band for the first time. Like that's what we sound like. Well, that's it. It was really a huge production step forward, and yeah.
Is it difficult to draw inspiration now? Because you have your whole life to write your first record, your second record, sometimes you got 6 months, right? But now when you're writing songs, is it hard for you to draw the same inspiration that
It's
you did?
different. It's a lot different because, when you're starting out, there's such a irreplaceable hunger of your early 20s. It's just like, because it's so much of it's do or die.
Yeah.
The stakes are so incredibly high when you're, got a band in a van out there and it's breaking down, and are we going to go to college? Are we going to get a record deal in time? What's going to happen? And so there's the stakes are, like I said, much higher. And so as success happens, or as you get more established and hopefully successful, or like you're doing it for a living, like we're blessed to do, you definitely go through periods where it's just like, okay, now what is this about for me? Because it was about make or break, for so many years. Well, now we're here. So what's it? And so for me, it's just become, about just meditating in that place, and not thinking about the past too much, but allowing, like, wherever I'm at to be that place, and to be the creator that is, rather than, oh man, it'd really great to sound like, I was 23 again, but you're never that again. Right. You can't embody those emotions. You can try. And I was always not very impressed when people would sort of really obviously go to try to
phone it in.
Yeah, phone it in, or redo it, like have it happen again. Those things are magic, and that's always appreciated about bands like REM, is that they always, even probably to the frustration of the record companies, would always reinvent every record. It was like, take a new perspective, change instruments, whatever. It was about the spirit and the soul of the band. It didn't matter. And I always was inspired by that. I think it was hard. It was hard for record companies, to get their head around that, but I guess that's all the art and commerce smack, it's like, yeah.
Because you were washing dishes before your first record deal, which is not easy to do. And then all of a sudden you get a record deal, and you're like, your life changes within moments, right?
Well, it changes, and it changes. You're blessed. You're so excited. Obviously, it's the most thrilling and amazing thing, but you're also, okay, now you're on point to become, totally versed up in business, and you're running a business all of a sudden. It's like, wow, how do we do that? What are these contracts? What do we need? We need a business manager. Oh, we need managers now. And so it does, it becomes a whole different thing, which is challenging, and I think, we're just blessed to have had it progress the way it has, because it's so amazing with the fans.
And this is in the 90s, when bands were actually selling records, if we can remember, buying records. You had a great story to tell me about meeting Kurt Cobain and Nirvana when we did the last show. So I think the audience would probably love to hear that.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, it was with Jerry Harrison. And we were recording, we were mixing Throwing Copper, I think. See, now I have to jar the memories. But it's close enough. So Nirvana was coming through on tour through Milwaukee. Jerry lived in Milwaukee, and we're like, oh, we got to go see him. We were doing pre-production. That's what it was. We were doing pre-production for Throwing Copper. Got it. And so we're super excited. We're going to go see Nirvana at the Armory, and Jerry's big rock star, so he'll get us in. Talking Heads right in, and so we go and. We go right backstage, and it's this weird backstage. It's an armory, so it's this, wherever all the soldiers were, just like sort of a humongous locker room for soldiers from like the 50s, 40s. It's bizarre. So we go back, and the first thing I remember is I walk over, and I had known Dave for a while, but I'd never met Chris. And they were looping. They had a loop, and they were looking at photos for Rolling Stone. They were trying to pick. Or publicity pictures or something. Like, oh, man, we took this one.
Back when you had film too.
Yeah.
And cassettes, right.
And I remember I was standing there thinking, hey, Dave, what's up? Can't wait to see the show, blah, blah, blah. And I remember looking up and thinking, where's Kurt? Kurt. And I look over, and he's all curled up. He's kind of folded in and sitting in the corner over there, just no shoes on. And I'm like, wow, the show's coming up soon.
Where's Kurt?
And he's right there, you know, like he's gonna be rocking. Well, what do I know? And then, you know, I think they kept looking at the picture, talking to Jerry, you know, and
So Kurt's just in the corner.
Yeah. And I kind of lost touch with it because he wasn't talking to us.
Yeah.
And so the show's about to go on. So, you know, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, take a leak. And so go in and, you know, it's urinal. I'm standing there, it's got the little dividers, standing there, and somebody comes up beside me and, hey, Kurt. That's when we met.
And that was it.
Yeah.
That's the big Nirvana story.
Yeah, and it's where I saw the band live and we're talking. I said, have a great show. And he said, I saw you guys on 120 minutes. It's cool. And then they were amazing.
Yeah.
But that's the story.
Well, you collaborate with a lot of great artists like Peter Buck. We were just talking about.
Yeah, but I didn't
right?
pee with Peter Buck.
Well, not that you need to.
Kurt Cobain.
But what was that like collaborating with Peter Buck?
Peter's awesome, man. We had a great time. He put some guitars on my first solo album. I went out to Portland and hung out with him, and went over to his house. I remember when I first got there. He had his Grammy out, and I was like, "Oh, cool, a Grammy." He goes, "Yeah, usually it's in my drawer. My freaking wife likes to pull them out and show them off." I'm like, well, that's natural enough. He put them on. He's like, "Yeah, I didn't really want that thing out here." That's perfect, though, REM, right?
They just kind of got back together. Did you see that?
I saw.
Michael Shannon was singing. Pretty
Michael,
cool.
Yeah, he'll pop up and sing. And it's just like, put out a record, go on tour, please. But then we just keep waiting.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when I listened to Selling the Drama, there was so many REM influences in that song. I just listened to it the other day. But I think they were one of the bands that definitely influenced you.
Big time.
Maybe the most, right?
Big time.
So talk to me about a little bit about today, right? You're touring with Collective Soul. We mentioned it's been since 2008. You've toured with so many great artists, right? Recently it was Bush, Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah.
We were chatting about that. Any bands from that era that you listen to and you're still like, this really connects with me as much as it did back in the day?
Stone Temple Pilots still does big time.
Yeah.
I mean, the riffs, those songs. I mean, that summer for me, you know, I love packaging with bands. I love, you know, the more the merrier. Then there's just these special ones that are like that, and it's just like incredible. You get to tour with them.
Yeah, incredible. Any great fan stories? Like fans told you how some of the music has changed your life? I mean, you have so many iconic songs like we spoke about. We spoke about I Alone. And I love all the stories behind some of the
So
songs.
many. And it's wild too, because the nature of live music and my lyrics is that they tend, you know, people will sort of adopt them into periods of their lives that are really heavy, you know? So I'll get a lot of that. Like, I just want to have a beer after the show, and it's like,
chill out.
and it's like, I love you too, but wow, and I love it, but it's heavy, you know, and it's cool, and it's such a great communication. But that is true. That, you know, they're heavy moments.
Yeah.
And I love it, but at the same time, I want to put out like a comedy record, you know, just to break okay, cool. But I love it.
Do you read all the comments on social media?
Of course.
People are the worst,
Yes.
right? I mean, some people are great, but then some people are the worst, right? Do you spend time?
So
Sometimes I
mean.
read the YouTube comments like, did you really have to say that?
So mean.
Yeah. But then there's a lot of love out there too,
There's
right?
so much love.
Yeah.
It all equals out.
No question. Well, we're going to get into this. We're playing the show. So June 4th is the show. If you guys aren't coming, you should be coming. June 4th at the bitter end. You're going to hear a lot of hits, a lot of live hits.
Yes, sir.
Any songs that we could expect to hear?
I don't know. We got to put it together. We don't even know how long it is yet.
We're still putting it
We're
together.
still putting it together. But yeah, my guitar player Zach's going to travel up from New Orleans. We're going to play at the bitter end for the first time. I used to walk past that place because I lived over in West Village for a couple of years in the early 90s. And I used to pass it all the time and think, there's the famous bitter end. There it is. Bob Dylan. Walk straight past it. Never been in.
Lady Gaga and live.
Now we're going to get to play.
Yeah, awesome. Is it hard to put together a set list when you have so many great songs? We just have to ask your fans, but
you know, as long as we play Lightning Crashes, because otherwise we get just punched. You know, it's like beat on after.
I was telling Tyson this story from the Rejects. You know, when I played with Courtney Love, she would hate to play doll parts. And I would
I
say,
love
hey,
that
listen,
song.
I don't know about you, but she'd say, my fucking drummer, I hate this fucking song. I'm like, what do I have to do with this? This is for everyone that came to see you play. But you love playing the hits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And for that reason, I hear the depth of the stories and how connected they are, and so I'm just up there knowing that I got to be good. People they take this really to heart, like this.
Yeah.
I can't fuck this song up, It's like, and so I kind of go into it with that feeling of just knowing that that's something that they're expecting a level, and I want to deliver it, so that they get to that place that they're hoping to get to.
Is it challenging to honor the past and also move forward with new music? We spoke about, Dean DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots playing a new song. So is that like a balance that you sometimes
it depends. It depends. I mean, I go in and out where I feel like, okay, I don't want to play anything. I really want to work on new music for 6 or 8 months. I don't want to think about anything. But then when we're out there touring, it's such a celebration of the music that people say, oh, it's just nostalgia, this, that, whatever you want to call it. For me, it's just it's a spiritual thing, with people. I don't care what year it is, what it is. It's like certain songs and certain things, they create a timeless moment. And, there's no reason to hate on it just because it's it's nostalgia rock, whatever. That's great, wherever you want to categorize it. But deeper than that, I think, is the fact that there's this sort of timeless connection that's being celebrated regardless of the era it came out.
Sometimes challenging, though, to balance it too, right? Because
It
we're
is.
talking about sometimes fans don't want to hear the new music, but
True.
at the end of the day, like, you have to get inspired, you have to write new music. Is it a balance that sometimes you struggle with?
Yeah, but the truth is, once you have some hits, nobody wants to hear them.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear too many new songs in the show.
Because then people take a bathroom break or whatever they do, right?
Yeah, I think the Rolling Stones were always really like, they would do like a few, but they never made everybody sit through the whole new Stones record and not hear Paint It Black. They didn't. So I just feel like, you got to play out. Yeah, you want to keep your energy, moving forward. But at the same time, that there's this celebratory aspect to what you're doing of celebrating the old stuff for the people.
What's the top 5 most meaningful lyrics that you've ever written? Because your lyrics go deep.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, I did research that.
Yeah. If you don't know that, we're in trouble, right?
Well, I mean, my lyrics, I'm a contemplative guy. I like to.
You're a deep guy.
Yeah, I like to meditate. I'm like I've meditated under every possible way.
You're a spiritual guy, I would say.
And so I'm always in that search place. For the truth and for all that big stuff. And so I've always been like that. And so to me, like I grab little things out. I'll just pull little phrases or things that something's floating around. I'll grab them and I'll just sort of montage them together. And I feel like that's how you get some magic, and you get people that say, oh man, that's something I wanted to say that, but I didn't know the words. I didn't either. It just can't, it's just, there's something about it. Songwriters know it's intangible. It's sort of like a magic that happens. And I like the first line of the song called I Alone, which is, it's easier not to be wise and measure these things by your brains.
I don't know what that means, to be honest.
Yeah,
I love it, though.
So, like, it's implying that wisdom comes in silence and not thinking. It comes from being and just being in the vibes, and then it just comes to you. It's sort of like, instead of working it, with your brain and your own effort. So anyway, I like that one.
I think your fans like that one.
I think that's probably a top one for fans.
Yeah. But we got 4 more, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. And then my favorite song, I think probably from everything I wrote in the 90s is this, or one of them. This is a song called The Distance from a record called The Distance to Here. And there's a line sort of in the refrain that we into what you would call the chorus is, are we locked into these bodies? Are we anything at all? Let's hold out for something sweeter. Spread your wings and fly. I thought was
deep,
a nice one.
Yeah.
And, again, just sort of like, when you asked me about this top, or you said maybe asked me the top 5, when you read them back as a writer, you go like, wow, I guess I'm always like sort of about the same thing. I'm sort of always sort of doing the same thing in different ways. And so it's like pretty fun.
Would Lightning Crashes be in that list?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But so I picked the lyric from Lightning Crashes for me that I pulled out was The angel opens her eyes, presents the circle, and puts the glory out to hide. I feel like that that line is special in the song because I've talked a lot about that song over the years, obviously, and how if there was any meaning behind it, it was a song about the circle of life and death. You know, say in a hospital, all these major events happening, babies coming in the maternity ward and people passing away. And that the circle, the baby, you know, lightning crashes into the baby, the angel that opens her eyes in the circle is like a representative of this circle of life. And that the birth sort of, the story of the song is how the birth sort of pushes that, sort of obscures that beauty and that life is then about.
Why do you think that song connects with so many people, by the way?
Because it's a searching type of song. It's a song that you go, oh, what's that mean? Oh, I'm being invited into a meditation almost. Or rather, it's a song, but it's also a story, and it's also the way it's arranged is very intimate in the beginning and then explodes at the end and has this really happy big ending. So where the song starts and where it finishes is totally not really predictable, and at least when it came out. And so I felt that was really one of the main reasons why people took it so much to heart, was because it wasn't edited either. It was 5 minutes 20. And even the radio edit was close to 5 minutes, and it used to get played the whole freaking song. Like Stairway to Heaven. It was like that long. It was like damn near as long. And I couldn't believe it when they made it a single. I couldn't believe how much it got played. Because they didn't ever ask for a 3.5. We couldn't have done a 3.5 minute version. It wouldn't have made sense.
And initially the label was like, I don't know about this song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
that was my favorite, but they didn't. Yeah, they didn't.
I think they were wrong.
They
think
didn't
you guys were all
care. They didn't care.
I think we got 2 more on that list.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Lightning Crashes. So there's a song called Overcome, which actually is on the 5th album, and it's a song that, another one of my songs, live songs that got sort of connected. We talked about with Tyson, I was talking about earlier with about lightning crashes in Oklahoma around 95. Well, this same thing happened in Overcome around 2001. And so the song is a New York connection there. And the bridge to that song, the words are, so drive me out to that open field, turn the ignition off and spin around. Your help is here, but I'm parked in this open space, blocking the gates of love. Mm. And, again, I think in the spirit of, who am I? What's the point of all this? Am I the problem? Like, where's all the love? I just gotta be it. It's that whole struggle to open your heart, and to surrender and let go, all the stuff that we all work through in life. And I just happen to be a songwriter. So
this is coming from at a time in the mid 80s when bands were releasing songs like Girls, Girls, Girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were writing some deep lyrics there.
Yeah.
So I think definitely hit it on the mark for sure. Yeah. And the last one, is there a last one that you?
Yeah. I did 5. Let's see. Oh, another bridge. I like these bridges because they're really, other musicians here know the bridge is like the whole thing. If you're going to have a bridge in a song, unless it's a bridgeless song, the bridge becomes the most important damn part. Okay, I've said enough about bridges. Okay, so there's a bridge, there's a song called Turn My Head from Secret Samadhi. It's the ballad that came out after Lakini's Juice. And the words are, we came to love you all day. These bastards are leaving, but somebody's got to stay. Whatever we called you, baby, it's just a name. Just a name.
I think if it doesn't work out as a singer, you could become a poet, for sure.
I like the way these read. Yeah. Hey, anybody want to just hang around? I'll just keep reading.
Yeah. And last but not least, Ed, I want to talk to you about your top 5 criminally underrated lead singers.
Oh,
we
yeah,
did one
I got
of these questions last time, and people debate these for like days. I think they're still debating on my TikTok.
Oh, they do, yeah.
Yeah. But,
these are fun. Okay, so
start with number 5, I guess.
Number 5. Let's start with a band called The.
Of course.
A guy named Matt Johnson, I think, is one of the most criminally underrated bands, songwriters, and singers of all time. There's this record called Love is Stronger Than Death, which is phenomenal. Matt Johnson. Check it out.
That's number 5.
That's 5. Okay. Number 4, Emerson Hart of Tonic. He's a great singer, good friend of mine. And everybody knows him, you know, people know Tonic from, you know, the ballad of, if you could only see the
Great
way
song.
she loves me. So that's a great song, a great singer. He's a great, incredible rock singer. And when they see him live, you're like, what the shit? You know, it's really great. Emerson Hart from Tonic.
Are they still playing?
Oh, yeah.
They are, okay.
Was that 4? Yeah,
No,
3.
that's number 3. We're on number 3.
Number 3, I'm going to go with, we talked about him last time too, because we talked about Screaming Trees, but Mark Lanigan, Screaming Trees.
Another great artist.
You know, you think of Screaming Trees, you think of these great songs, and his solo stuff, his voice is so haunting. The last stuff that he put out before he sadly passed away is absolutely incredible. Great singer. Number 3.
I think we're on number 2.
Oh, what a shit.
I
Number
can never
2.
count in these things.
Yeah, number
People are
2. Number 2.
There's 7 in the top 5. Okay, sorry.
All right, number 2, I picked Jay Mascis of Dinosaur Jr. And Dinosaur Jr., Jay's known as an incredibly amazing genius guitarist, but I love his vocal. I always saw his vocal was like so underrated because it's so unique and it has this childlike thing. It's just, and his tone is just so bitchin' with the guitar, the way it mixes. And I always thought that was an incredible sound. So Jay Mascis, you're a great singer.
And then number 1, criminally underrated singer, according to Ed.
Number 1, Bob Mould. Bob Mould of Husker Du and his own stuff, you know, just Bob. Incredible melodist, but an amazing singer. Like the song, like his vocal and the guitar, like they're married. The tone is just so cool. It's a lot like Jay and Dinosaur Jr. too. That's incredible 90s guitar wizards that were so alternative and badass and also great singers, but not really known as like front guys.
Yeah.
But badass.
There's a record I want to talk to you about, right? So because this whole episode is about the connectivity with New York and all the artists, and we're doing the show, if you guys don't remember, June 4th at the Bitter End. I want to talk about this record. I want to talk about Lou Reed, the Velvet Underground, what this record means to you. I met Lou Reed, and I hate to say he was a bit of an asshole to me, but you know, this is what happens when you meet people. You're a little disappointed. They say never meet your idols, but you know, wasn't great.
I hear you. I love this record, and I love Lou. I love the purity of his soul, his songwriting. It was just, you listen to the songs and you just think they're like Happy Birthday. They're just simple. They're genius. They're incredible. Like, and I was a huge fan forever. And then I got to have breakfast with Lou in Australia.
I hope he was nicer to you.
You know, he's very prickly, but he was nice.
Very prickly.
Yeah. And he, but it was with Jerry Harrison, and Jerry said, hey, we want to have breakfast with Lou Reed. I said, hell yeah. So I get down there, and I think we were playing a festival, and I forget, I sat down, and I'm like, wow, Lou Reed, you know? I'm just like, and I'm listening to him and Jerry talk. I'm like trying not to say much. And I'm going to do an interview with like Spin or some big deal. Like I was all nervous about it. And Lou, I said, I think I have to go, you know, I got to go do this interview. And he said, well, do you tell the truth in interviews? and I said,
this is Lou Reed saying this.
Lou Reed said, do you tell the truth in interviews? Just out of the blue like that. Yeah. And I go, well, I mean, generally I try to tell the truth in my life. Yeah. Just, as a general rule, yeah, why not? He goes, I don't. I've never told those bastards anything but lies. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, guess what I did? Guess what I did in the last one? And I go, I don't know. He goes, I convinced this writer that William Burroughs and I did heroin, but we didn't have a hypodermic, and we only had a Ziploc bag and a baby and a diaper needle, one of those nappy needles, and we figured that shit out. I told him to his face and walked out, and that was untrue, the whole thing.
And that's why Lou Reed's an asshole. Anyway, this is a pleasure. June 4th, what are you looking forward to, Ed?
I can't wait to play the Bitter End. I can't wait to be with you. Can't wait to hang.
Awesome.
I think it's going to be a true New York happening, man.
You guys all coming to the show? I hope so. You're going to hear a lot of hits. All the bands that are on the show tonight, except for Tyson, be playing. So awesome. Thanks for coming.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. All right. So welcome back to Spin Magazine's Lip Service. I'm with the amazing Eugene Hutz and Grace Bergere. How you guys doing?
Yeah, all right. Thanks for having us, man.
Thanks for being here. You guys have such a history with New York, Eugene. The band was formed here, I think, in 1999, right?
Yeah, 98 actually.
98.
Yeah, I mean, it was never really formed.
What's really like a collective in a sense.
Yeah, I snowballed into it, kind of just started basking in a Times Square. And, then it became duo with accordion player and a trio, 4 people. And so on and so forth till I didn't know how many people in the band, really. There was about 3 years when there was nobody knew how many people in the band. Is it 9 or 12?
Sometimes I feel like there's like 17 on stage with you, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. So, but with touring, with that becoming a touring entity, it kind of became more reasonable, strategic, and I mean, there's a number of people you can fit on a vehicle.
Well, you have a label, right? And you have a bunch of artists under the label. So are there bands that you send out with tour support, or is it just that everyone's sort of like, it's kind of grassroots and they do it themselves?
Well, it's always like that. I mean, it's a kind of, it's Tao. It's way of life.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess it became semi-corrupted, yes, as you were saying, with, that's just hard analytics with social media being such a great part of it, that, a band basically can't get anywhere unless they're savvy with their social media. Sure, that became a new dimension of everybody's doings. But essentially, I think it still dwells in great songs, great performance, and consistency of your motivation.
Definitely. Talk to me about working with people like Rick Rubin back in the day, because obviously a genius producer, and it must have been incredible working with him.
Yeah. So, well, Rick is definitely, that was 2010. We had a very different kind of experience with Rick than what most musicians seem to be having, where they, sort of had like compartmentalized kind of experience with Rick, where he was in the studio maybe here and there, and that was a very different thing for us, where maybe because of the proximity of where we were recording, which was not too far away from his house, so we were just hanging with Rick for month and month and month, and I know other bands who experienced that too, which was really a way of here's the thing. Here's what I like about producers that some people don't like about producers. Because besides Rick, I worked with other great producers.
Sure.
Steve Albini, Nick Launay, who's my favorite producer of all times, and Victor Van Voogd and Andrew Sheps. These are all killer dudes at what they do. And when bands get fragile with their fragile egos about any kind of criticism, and I specifically look forward to it.
Right.
Like, and so Rick, one of the things he said, not right away, but when the time was right, he was like, listen, this record is going to be about you coming in terms of being a singer. It's like, my first album came out 20 years before that, right? So I should be like all up and into, getting temperamental. But no, this is actually what I like. It's like, okay, how so? So we talked about it, and it was a kind of experience of bringing me up to speed of things that I was not aware of, which is there's tons, even still now, it's an endless process of sculpting your craft. And so I love that. And, Rick was also like, he's like, you're doing great at near rhyming, but I think you can do like Byronic rhyming. And so, so we gave that a shot and conquered that discipline. Not that that's like a life game changer or anything like that, but those were just things I weren't paying attention to because I was busy doing other things, you know? And that's the one thing that people don't usually grasp with working with Rick, is that a lot of his expertise is beyond music. It's actually quite literary. That's kind of where he dials people's focus into bringing them up to maximum potential of being able to crunch out their best, lyrical analytics and just become a laser at what you do.
Was he very hands-on with you, or did he come in after the songs were already recorded? And because a lot of times I've heard he just comes in at the end and
no,
says,
it was very hands-on. That's what I'm saying. That was a kind of, for some one reason or another, but that was a very different experience for our band. Perhaps part of it was because we had such a different instrumentation, and he doesn't usually maybe work with that kind of particular arrangement, or gypsy punk rock genre. So he was definitely pretty psyched, and we had him laughing and crying and going through the full emotional vacchanalia.
Yeah, for sure. And we lost the great Steve Albini not long ago. What was it like working with him? Obviously, Nirvana, one of the greatest producers ever.
Way before Nirvana. I mean, actually, one of the greatest bands that Steve produced was Wedding Present, which was really a fantastic English band from Leeds. Had a really singular kind of a British indie punk rock, kind of post-Smiths, post kind of Manchester sound. Really, really cool band. And that's amazing. And when I brought it up to Steve, he couldn't remember them. He was like, I was just in Italy. I lived before States, I was living in Italy, and their record Bizarro was constantly on Italian independent radio. And I was listening to it, and I really was digging it. And when I brought it up with Steve, he was literally couldn't recollect that band. I was like, well, you better recollect it, because it was one of the greatest fucking records he ever did. So he's just, we reached out to him because, we certainly came from that angle of music that's very, power stage, full on energy, beam of light kind of driven. And, I love Jesus Lizard and many other things he was doing, Breeders and Pixies. And so that's kind of why we got in touch with him, because it was time to capture that kind of super kind of authentic sounds of clang, clang, and bang, bang, and what's on top of it, because that's really what he captures is those sounds. I mean, you know that well, because if you don't have those sounds, everything else on top is whatever. It's not going to do it. Yeah.
Talk to me about when you first moved to New York many years ago and kind of the first shows you started seeing. I know Fugazi was a band that you really got into early on.
Yeah.
And one of the best bands ever from back in the day, right?
Yeah. Well, it's actually, my connection in New York didn't start in New York, which is probably why I have such a deep affinity for New York music, because I saw its mesmerizing power doing its work way outside of New York. And the name of the band is Sonic Youth.
Of course.
Which is, so iconic and quintessential to New York downtown vibration and frequency. And so when I was growing up in Ukraine, I was all up into punk rock up to my neck and over, and in quite advanced forms of punk rock. I mean, I'm not talking about like basic things like Sex Pistols and Clash, like that I was listening to when I was like 10 years old.
No, you went deep.
Yeah, I mean, we were listening to Birthday Party, Nick Cave, and I Stürze Neubauten and Joy Division and Gang of Four, and so I went to Sonic's show with my friends, and being pretty well attuned to what's happening in music worldwide in field of alternative music, but what we saw was just kind of transcended all those ideas, because it was 1989. I was 15 years old, and the band, it was, first of all, I was 14, and this band, it was all ages band. It was just seemed to be like all over the place. Like every member was like from a, I think Steve Shelley was like 24 then, and I think Lee was maybe like at least his late 30s by that time, but was so appealing, because that's kind of how I grew up. Like in Ukrainian punk scene, it was all about all ages. That was not it was not clicking anyway. And so that spoke to me, but also the music they were doing was so, it was avant-garde, it was alternative tunings, but it still danced around the basic energy of Ramones.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't so avant-garde that nobody could relate to it.
Right.
There was mosh pit going on at all times. I was not in that mosh pit unusually, so because I was just standing there and thinking, what am I seeing? Like I was thinking, what philosophers are they reading?
Mm.
You know, for the it was just such a there was such a intellectual pursuit about that music, and that's what kind of New York. It's a big part of New York musical pursuit. There's some kind of there was some kind of a intellectual breakthrough intent behind a lot of it, even if it's expressed through like super decadent, very radical means.
Yeah.
And then directly after that, Lydia Lunch came to New York and played with my friends and Kid Congo, so I kind of experienced that before I got here. And when I got here, I just saw it in its full fruition.
Yeah, Grace, I was mentioning, I think that you had done a song with Thurston Moore, right? Which is pretty amazing. We were talking about Sonic Youth. So talking about that, how did that come about? You're signed to, I think, Eugene's label, right? Casa Gogol?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Pretty
yeah.
cool to do a song with Thurston Moore.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. Eugene had asked that I contribute to the compilation album that he just did, New York Continuity. And I think for me, my favorite New York band is the Velvet Underground.
You heard my
and-
Lou Reed story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So we chose All Tomorrow's Parties, and and then Eugene called me and was like, Thurston's gonna do something on your track, and I really couldn't believe it.
Yeah, pretty amazing,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, really amazing.
But are you not telling it right? No, I mean, it was so important thing. I mean, actually, I'm so proud of this, how it came together, because it came together out of thin air in a matter of seconds.
That's true.
I mean,
Because you're friends with like everyone. We were just talking about Nick Cave. You were like, you went to a show the other day. You ended up singing with him. He passed the mic to you. You have an incredible, I mean, you're connected to everyone.
well, I mean, I've been kicking around the block for a while, so
Yeah.
it's not really a miracle,
Yeah. Were you
Plus-
friends with Thurston? Are you guys friends?
Yes, I mean, Thurston is one of the biggest inspirations in my life. Was my whole overture of their. I mean, I'm in New York because of Sonic Youth.
Mm.
When I saw Sonic Youth, I was like, all right, I'm getting out of here and I'm going over there. Where are you guys from? New York? I'm going over there. That was literally my state of mind. And because, when we were immigrating with my family, it was not, they were entertaining thoughts of going to Australia or Canada. And I was like, no. Maybe you guys are going to Australia. I'm going to New York. And the thing about it is that this is why it's great. So Grace selected the song. I asked her to do a song, as she said, for the compilation. And I called her from Europe. I was on tour. I said, listen, we have 24 hours to actually add this to compilation. It's going into distribution. And she's like, well, I'm going to go. I will relay down this version. I said, please make it the most tripped out version of Velvet of All Tomorrow Parties possible.
And I took that to mean spaghetti western.
Yes, and with great addition of style. And as soon as I got it back, which was hours later, like, respect, I mean, it's like I called her 6 hours later, I had a track, and then I just sent it to Thurston. I said, listen, this is what we have. I mean, we're taking, if you would be so, into helping us to complete this fantasy of this hypnosis, your particular kind of hypnosis, Thurston, is highly welcomed here, And so Thurston sent 2 tracks back on guitar very, very shortly, actually. And so in a matter of hours, no managers, no agents, just friends talking, We had a greatest overture we could have possibly have for that album dedicated to New York continuity.
Yeah.
You know, a song from Velvet Underground sang by New Name on a Block by Grace Bergere, and a blessing from the OG Thurston Moore. You
Pretty
know?
amazing. Talk to me about the collective, because obviously you got Puzzle Panther, you have your label. You're going to play the show on June 4th, which we're excited about. Casa Gogol All-Stars, right? It is a collective in a sense, right?
It is a collective in a sense. And while we're still on Sonic Youth topic, with Puzzle Panther that night, Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth will be playing with us.
Amazing.
If you're cool with that.
Awesome. Can't be cooler.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is a collective because, you know how it is with labels of our kind, and I consider us to be kind of continuing the tradition of Discord and Sub Pop and Matador. You know, one of my favorite. Those are like my favorite labels of all times. You know, and Manchester scene, of course. You know, Hacienda and the whole thing. So those are like very regional labels, and it's not because they're not tuned worldwide. It's because what they're doing is committed to essentially doing music with their friends and releasing music of their friends. And it is the same thing here. You know, this may grow and transform, but in the gist of it, it's just like Discord. It's when I first moved to the States, so I was already on that Sonic Youth train, and then I saw Fugazi like 2 months later. And I clearly saw that these bands, Sonic Youth and Fugazi, are very aesthetically affiliated. So I immediately made friends with them. Plus, knowing how, Fugazi, there's no velvet rope and any of that fucking bullshit. So I met them right after the show. And then I was really impressed with that because that really made me feel home. I mean, they didn't have to do that. And I barely spoke English. I just simply looked up Discord records in Maximum Rock and Roll magazine address, and I wrote them a letter that, hey, I'm ready to move to Washington D.C. if that's where you guys are, and start helping to the company and put out records or whatever you want me to do. Like, I don't know, make coffee or lick stamps, whatever. And Guy wrote me back, and I have that letter. And Ian says that Ian doesn't throw away anything away. So says, I still have that letter somewhere. He wrote me back saying, well, it's, listen, great, thanks. Now, this is not a real company. It's a couple high school friends putting out records of other friends who are also in the bands. And so there's really no any kind of bunk bed, facility where you can move to. There's nothing like that. And so, okay. And also another thing is that I remember reading an interview somewhere with Ian where he was like, well, Discord is great because our motto is, and I think I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty sure that part of his quote was, he's like, it's great because part of our spirit is fuck real business. Right. Like, that's not what we're not doing that. Right. We are doing this and it has business side of it, but it's really not about that. So, partly fuck real business remains my motto as well. Right. And that's why, we're here to have fun in rock and roll and release records of our friends and not to get too, too wrapped up in all the industry crap that corrupts and kills the spirit, essentially,
Well, in a way, I hope that we bring the spirit of New York, the spirit of rock and roll back to New York. So I think it's still here. I think a lot of people are waiting for that, and people that love music are. New York is the city where it all started for me. I think New York is the greatest music city in the world. So the show on June 4th, thankfully you guys are going to be playing. I'm excited for that. And then you're going on tour. Talk to me about the tour coming up.
Yeah, well, as always, we're definitely figured that thing out. And I do love touring. I don't know. Yeah. It's strange to hear musicians complaining about touring. It's like, the fuck you rather be doing? Really?
Stay home? This is what you do.
I don't know what goes through their minds when they're saying that. I really have no idea. Yeah. But so this band is different. When band says that they're doing 120 shows a year and it's so draining, it's like, really? That's like,
do something else.
That is quite actually. That's like that's the least you can do as a band. That means you're not totally sleeping at the wheel.
Right.
Yeah, that means you're not forgotten. And that means you're semi-vital, you know. So, of course, you got to work smarter than harder, but it's really not about that, because playing shows is actually rejuvenating itself, you know. So if music somehow really if touring really kills you somehow, then I don't know, maybe, you know, consider playing different kind of music.
Right.
Maybe that's what's killing you. Is try writing better fucking songs, or I don't know.
Do you have a top 5 New York City punk bands of all time, according to Eugene?
I wouldn't separate it as punk and not punk, because it's, you know, it's especially in New York, where everything is there was a lot of proto-punk that was so already, you know, the gist of it was punk, you know. So, of course, I mean, you know, I would say that, you know, I mean, of course, Velvet Underground is foundation, and Sonic Youth is Velvet Underground of the 80s, 90s, and so on, you know, in that sense. And you know, Daydream Nation and Goo and Dirty, probably that rampage of 3 albums is probably kind of one of their peaks for sure. You know, they had many peaks, but yeah, but also, you know, Gorilla Biscuits, you know, Let's Start Today. Like, I can't think of New York music without that. I can't think about New York music without Agnostic Front. Like, what do you like? That's the New York sound, you know. Cro-Mags. Trying to think of something that's more recently. Well, Grace's album is great. So it's great because when I heard it, I was like, "There's nothing for me to do." Yeah, I don't have that. Like my producer disease did not kick in my head, where I'm like, "What's wrong with this? Let's find faults." There's nothing to correct. It was done. So it was like, can we just put it out? You know, and that's very rare. So I love Grace's album because it's kind of a continuation in a lot of ways of that Velvet Underground kind of aesthetic and sound.
Definitely.
Yeah. And sensibility.
So on June 4th, what can we expect? Puzzle Panther, Eugene, the All-Stars, right?
Well, it will be Puzzle Panther featuring Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth, and Sergey from Gogol Bordello, our, you know, orchestra pit, refugee, and Grace.
And Grace.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That would be our lineup for that shindig.
Amazing. I don't know if it's sold out, but if it's not sold out, make sure you guys get tickets, because I think the tickets are almost gone. So appreciate you coming on. I'm excited for June 4th. It's going to be amazing.
Fuck yeah, man.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Welcoming to the show, Torture and the Desert Spiders. Actually, just Torture.
Yeah, hi.
Because I don't see the Desert Spiders, but
They're in the audience.
talk about the name, because initially you were a solo artist, right?
Yeah.
And then the spiders came into play, the Desert Spiders.
Yeah, so it was I moved to London when I was like 18 or so, and I wanted to make music, and I wanted to get booked around like these bands that I was falling in love with, which was like, I really liked experimental and post-punk, and I pretty much, anyone who heard me back then, I sounded like a folk artist, but I thought like the ethos, I thought it was there, and I didn't have access to any kind of gear, like, you know, like eventually somebody gave me a line 6 and then I tried to sing out of it, like, you know, at house shows, like it was not the right thing, and I did it on Insane, which is even worse. And then, like, you know, eventually, like, somebody, like, I bought myself a $60 guitar and you know, a Squire, which I still play, which is insane for some reason, like 6 years later, alongside another guitar, and I wanted to be like taken seriously, and to get taken seriously in London at the time, you had to get booked with these bands, and I kind of thought all these bands, they don't sound much different than I would if I plugged myself in and played. And I had this like Bob Dylan story in my head all the time. Like, oh, if I just had a little bit of noise around me, I could sound like that. But I just don't have access to that. I didn't have, you know, what Tyson was saying earlier about, like, you know, a lot of us were kind of losers as artists. Right. Like I was a weird kid. I was like, I went from eating lunch in the bathroom to being like, the practice room was open. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, I was like, okay, I'm going to come up with a name. And if I have a band name, like, they're going to book me, because they're not going to think I'm a solo girl artist, you know, woman. They're not, because nobody's booking Anna Kunz, whose only thing is on SoundCloud, sound like a folkhead. But I'm listening to Modern Lovers, but I'm listening to Fugazi. I'm listening to these bands. I love these bands. You know, I want to sound like this. And so I was like, okay, well, I can span the difference. So I made a list of band names on the 263 after a show I watched at Nambucca in London on the Holloway Road going north. And I was just really stoned. I was a big stoner back then. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make all these band names. And then one came to mind, and it was Torture and the Desert Spiders. And it was a play on my mom's name early in the industry when she was managing a band when she was a kid. And her name was Teresa Chambers. So this Irish band was like, oh, more like Torture fucking Chambers. So I made this thing, and I called my mom up, and I had these terrible other band names. I mean, unbelievably bad. And I called my mom up, and she woke up. She was like, what are you doing calling me at this hour? I just moved to London. Oh, I had this band name. All right, say it. So I read them, and I read after Torture and the Dead Spider. She goes, that one's shit, and hangs up on me. All right, she's gone to bed. And I went, I don't have a band name. And then calls me back about 20 minutes later, and was like, what was that one again? Desert Spiders? And I was like, yeah. I was doing a dissertation on gender studies and David Bowie, so I definitely robbed that from the Spiders from Mars. I didn't know.
That's
It was
all
actually,
right.
it was a
If
fan
you're going to
years
steal
later.
from someone, Bowie's a good person to steal
I would say a respectable one. And then calls me back, the Desert Spiders? Yeah, that's your band name. Hangs up again. I'm up, like, looking at my ceiling in fucking Highgate, just like, what? I've just got a band name. Sent out a bunch of the same booking emails I've been sending. Hi, I'm Anna Kunz, reaching out on behalf of Torture and the Desert Spiders. Every single one came back. I was booking all these shows, and I was like, oh my God, it worked. And I never stopped bullshitting.
By the way, for those of you listening on YouTube, you can just become your own manager and email on behalf of someone else.
Yeah, still
and
do
there
it
you go.
sometimes. Yeah.
Get a bunch of gigs like that.
100%.
Your mother had a crazy connection to New York. She actually used to book the Mercury Lounge.
Yeah.
She was like the first person
Mhm.
to book the club, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like growing up around that?
It was more of a mythology by the time that I was growing up. You know, my mom was out of it for a while by the time I was getting raped or I was growing up. And so, like, you know, for me, it was a lot of mythology. It was a lot of, like, for me, I didn't get to, you know, when I was very little, I'd go into, like, BB King's or something like that. Or my mom took me to St. Mark's and when I was a kid and got me my first pair of Doc Martens and told me that if we were rich kids or if we were a rich family, she would have bought me the yellow tartan slacks at Trash and Vaudeville. And if I was richer, I wouldn't have had to buy the Dollar Bin Moody Blues record. She would have bought me something nicer. And then when I was old enough, she bought me a Ramones record, my first record, because that was, you know, it was $20. It was insane. It was a new record. And I lived a different generation's life, I think, maybe in a generation. You know, we were on the cusp, you know, born in 99, like on the cusp of a different generation. So I grew up with mythology of my mom. And I grew up with my mom, you know, I think the best way to put it is like, sometimes you need mythology to get through the shit times. And I had an infinite fountain of mythology in my house, whether it was real or not. And I learned later, of course, it all was real, but most of it was, you know, but, you know, my mom would walk in my room and I'd be like, you know, 11 years old, playing Rolling Stones with my friends in my bedroom on a record player. And she'd be like, hey girls, you listen to the Stones? That was my birthday party. I remember my birthday party and we all follow like little like idiots, you know, in our pajamas. And we walk into her room and there's a birthday card from the Stones for her 21st birthday or something. And it says like, hey T, you know, have a bad, and she's like, you know, she's saying, you know, I don't know, she's saying like, oh Keith, you know, it's like, and you're just sat there like, I don't know if this is true. Do you know what I mean? You're like a kid and it is true, but it was mythology.
Yeah.
It was mythology in action. I think that's what having someone related to you in music is. Cause like, it wasn't like, I wasn't getting into places or whatever. I was getting into a couple clubs for trying to, you know, they were nice to me, but I don't even think that they thought I was telling the truth that I was related to her because she was so far removed. But she was someone you called to, you know, I'd be like, is this deal bullshit? And my mom will go, it's such bullshit. I'm gonna need you to call my friend right now. And then they're gonna yell at you and tell you how bullshit it is. And I go, thank God, I thought it was bullshit. I read Passman's book or whatever. And she'd go, yeah, well, it's worse than that. You know, it's worse than that. And I'm like, okay. You know, it wasn't, oh, she's gonna book you a show. It was absolutely not.
I was going to say, you mentioned Trash and Vaudeville. Back in there, it seemed such a weird concept. You had stores just for rock and roll clothing.
It was a dream.
Doesn't it seem like a weird concept?
Yeah, and wigs. And it's where I got my first one-hitter on St. Mark's when I snuck out of high school. It's, you know, I mean, it was amazing. It was a dream come true when you're a kid. Like, you know, I'd sneak out of class and I'd just like dream of this stuff. And by then, like, I was already like faking accounts on like Guilt Group, anywhere you could get like fucking fancy clothes for free or cheap if you could fake a name, but they never come. So okay, I'll work at a restaurant. I'd sneak out to Manhattan and but I wore my first pair of Docs for 7-8 years, and some girl robbed them off me in the gym class. She's a cool girl now. We still follow each other. She's very cool and very queer on Instagram now. I actually rock with you. I'm not gonna say your name, but I rock with you. But she's one of the few I still follow. But you know, when I got my shoes back, nobody believed me. When I got my shoes back, because we lived in it was a wealthy neighborhood in Jersey. I was not. And one other kind of, I guess, girl, she stole them from me, and she tarred and tarred and waxed them or whatever, so they looked beautiful. I was very grateful. So those gave me an extra 2 years. So I didn't really need to go to Trash and Vaudeville again to get docs. But the idea was a dream. You know, it was like the dream as a kid was like to go get the wig, the one hitter. It's like a night on the town. It's what I thought a night on the town was like. It actually is, by the way. Being 25 here now, it is what a night on the town in New York is like.
There was a guy that worked at Trash and Vaudeville named Jimmy, who I'm sure Eugene knows back in the day, who was an incredible character. And that's kind of what I miss about New York, those characters. Like Jimmy he was at every rock show. He was sort of like a huge like Iggy fan, and he was the spirit of New York. So, you know, I think he'll always be remembered. And he was one of the reasons why I think when I moved back to New York from LA years ago, I was like, man, I miss this about New York, and I miss that spirit. But did you ever go there and meet him? He was. I'm going
to assume if there's one person I'm thinking of, it was them. But I was a baby.
The only guy where he kind of ran.
Yeah, it was 100%. It was 100%. Definitely. But what was the record store next to it called?
God, I don't even remember. I just remember Trash and Vaudeville being like
I feel like he'd know.
Store. I mean, Eugene might know. I don't know. Eugene, the record store that was next to Trash and Vaudeville.
Do you know what it was called? Between Searches, what was it?
Oh, Kim's Underground, right.
I lived there. I used to sit on the steps.
That, but I have a really bad memory.
No, I'm worse. Yeah.
And talk to me about the music that you were listening to growing up. There's a lot of Sinead, I think, in
Huge.
Your influence. It's undeniable actually. When you listen to music, that for sure she was probably your biggest influence.
Yeah, Sinead O'Connor was my biggest influence for sure. Nina Simone, I was kind of spanning the difference. I liked really great singers. Lake Street Dive was like a weird one. It was a left turn. It's what I was really into singers, and then I was into things that made me feel things. And if they could cross that threshold, it was mind blowing. So Sinead was one of the few that did that for me. Like I was a massive Wilco fan. I love lyrics. I love things like, you know, his goal in life was to be an echo. You know, you're like 10 years old, sat in your room, staring at your ceiling, just wanting to get out of your freaking life that you're in. And you're hearing that bounce around in your head and you're like, oh my God, someone said that. So I'm not that weird. I can't be that weird. And you don't think that, you know, how many 10, 12 years later, you'll be sitting here listening to your man from earlier just say, oh, like, we were all losers or whatever. Cause you don't think that. You think everyone's your hero or your idol or whatever until then. And I felt that way about them. But Wilco, Sinead O'Connor, Amy Ray had the song Birds of a Feather. And I can still not find it really anywhere. I think there's a YouTube video of her singing in a bathtub, and it literally shook me to my core. It was one of the most raw things I've ever heard. But then I was like, I love, like, I don't know, I loved Dr. Dog as a kid. I loved a lot of this. Paolo Nutini, Sinead, the great singers like moved me. Jake Bugg, even. I was like a mega fan. I had a poster the size of him on my wall. But then I was listening to weirder experimental shit, a lot of Scottish music. I was the 1990s, probably one of my favorite bands of all time.
Of course.
Album Cookies, crazy. Belle and Sebastian, I love. But like, it kind of, the Ramones was my first record. So you know what I mean? Joan Jett was my biggest thing as a kid.
A lot of this episode is about the connectivity with all the New York City artists. We've had a lot of New York City artists on the show. So June 4th, what are we going to see from the band? Talk to me about being an independent artist right now in New York City for you too.
June 4th, we're gonna play as the band. Yeah, it's gonna be really fun. I got my boys here. It's gonna be at the bitter end. It's gonna be insane. And I don't know, being an independent artist in New York is weird. Being an independent artist anywhere is weird. It's a case of eternal imposter syndrome. I hope that the case gets worse because that means we're doing better, I think. But I think it's a really cool thing that's happening in New York right now. And I'm really lucky to be feeling like for the first time I'm really a part of it. You know, I had my home in Liverpool for so long and I felt like that was a crazy scene to be growing in, and to finally feel like I've locked into something here where people are engaging with it in the way that they are. And I'm able to record our first record here right now and to be doing this residency. It's all mind blowing for me. So it's a very weird experience. I'm starting to realize that New York is as small as the mythology made it out to be.
Sure. And
that is the biggest privilege for me right now, you know, is to be in the web of it. And I don't know. Yeah.
And I think we've had a lot of the great new generations of bands out of New York City on the show. So do you have a top 5 local New York City rock bands right now that you're really into?
Yeah.
Like some of them might be in the audience.
I'm going to go cross-eyed.
A couple of them that are hanging out here.
I'm going to say some bands. I I don't remember a single band that's ever existed right now. It turns out.
I know when you get asked that question, it's like, I can't remember anything.
I don't know anything. I'm a dumb person.
Somebody asked me
sometimes.
the other day my top 5. I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah. Bands that I think are amazing in New York right now. I think Pop Music Fever Dream is amazing. I'm really impressed by them. That live show is ridiculous. I think Dolly, if you haven't listened to Dolly, their records and live, they're the only band that should have like 6 guitarists on stage ever. They're unbelievable. I think Trophy Wife is probably the best artist in New York right now. She's amazing. Her project's amazing. Every time I get off stage with her, I'm like, it's like the feeling of like when you get off stage at a festival and you know that like the massive band's playing the big stage and you're like, I can't believe I'm on a bill with them. Every time I play with her. Caitlin Starr is really cool. I haven't got to see her live yet, but I really like what she's doing. Anything Truman Flyer touches is gold. She's got multiple projects at one time. The Living Rumors, Frequent Flyers, doesn't matter. She's just a star. I don't know how many that was.
I think the telescreens are great. They're going to be playing the show
Yeah, I mean,
too.
they're my best friends and they're
We're
geniuses.
excited. Yeah.
But I try and do my little for my smaller bands that are coming up. But Telescreens, it's a given. It's a given. They're like my brothers, and they're also one of the best bands I've seen live. And watching them create, like they've come into the studio a couple times to hang out with us and just like yell at us or tell us or compliment us our ears off. And either one is actually really helpful. Even though I'm always confused when they're around because they're my boys and they've got lots of thoughts and there's all of them. 4 of them, but I think that they're great and I can't wait to share a stage with them. It's our first time doing that properly. Jackson's played a few of the residency shows with us, with me, and so did Austin with him, and it was amazing. But to get to do something with us is going to be really cool.
So June 4th, we have Ed Kowalczyk from Live. We have Hamilton of the Walkmen. We have Torture. We have the Telescreens in Jackson. Thesaurus Rex. Who else am I forgetting? And Gogol,
the big guy.
number 1, and Gogol, who we've already spoken to tonight. Gogol too. The Gogol All Stars. Should we get Casa Gogol All Stars? So thank you for coming, everyone. I appreciate you hanging out for this long. It's been 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So it's been great. I hope to see you all June 4th. And if you don't have tickets, please get them soon because it's almost sold out. So appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.